lifelike. It is just absolutely unbelievable. But this is a special Blue Plate special. This is a special, not just a regular special, but a special. And in just a minute, we're going to continue doing what we have been doing all morning long. And we're going to come back on tomorrow at the same time, and we'll come back on Thursday at the same time. And wherever we happen to be, we're going to just kind of keep rolling. We are recording, we're doing the audio version right now of the new book that comes out September 8th. It's the third in the Noticer series, the third in that the Jones book. And man, I'm just telling you, this is my favorite one. Okay, so I'm just letting you know. And we're probably a little behind this morning because we just had some technical stuff that always happens when you're starting. And so understand, we're just we're giving you an inside view here. That's what we're doing. We're Gabe and Matt and Keith are all in here. SB is going to be monitoring the comments, and she'll be talking back and forth with you while we just continue on. And if I mispronounced a word, which I did mispronounce one a little while ago, and you think, how could you mispronounce a word that you wrote? Well, evidently I have probably mispronounced it my entire life. But I wanted to welcome everybody before we get going, and I'm seeing a bunch of names all across here. If you're on Facebook, please don't forget, if you haven't clicked the notification button, please do, so that you will be notified when we go live, anytime we go live. And know that in the little down in the comment chat, there will be a link for you, okay? And that's where you can pre-order. If you like what you're hearing, you can pre-order the whole book. You won't be able to just pre-order just where we are in this, but you'll be able to pre-order the whole book. And hey, to everybody on Instagram, to Brian Backen on Twitter. I'm seeing these comments coming in from all over the United States. Haven't seen anybody from outside the United States yet, but let's see. Kentucky, from Kentucky. Well, there's outside the United States, isn't it? Anyway, if you're on YouTube, please press the subscription button. There should be a way on all these things for you to link to, and pre-order Just Jones. Sometimes a thing seems impossible until it is actually done. So I told you we were a little bit behind. We're going to go ahead and get started. Honestly, we did not plan to begin right on the beginning of a chapter, but because we are kind of behind and we had to break for some stuff, and also my stomach was growling, so I had to eat something. That's a very odd thing when you're doing these recordings for all of these microphones. Everything is so sensitive that you literally, it picks it up when my stomach growls. So they go, oh, we got to stop and eat. We got to eat something. So, all right, you guys ready? Everybody good in there? Okay. All right. Here we go. We're starting on Chapter 4, and what's happened is some of you know Jones was in jail, and so now I have driven to a place in some small town in Florida, and I'm ready to get him out. But just be aware, we're going to go, and if they stop me, they stop me, and you're just going to see this is how we do this, okay? Let's see. You guys ready? All good? All right. All right. Chapter 4. Identification, please. The uniformed officer at the desk stifled a yawn. Okay, let's see. Okay, but I don't have to do the yawn when I'm saying the word.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Andy, I'm sorry. I think you're going to have to just start from the beginning of the book. I think we had a little problem earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You just want everybody to see me throw a fit right here. Everything. Start at the beginning of the book. Okay. All right. Don't think that hadn't occurred to me that we might have to do that at some point. Okay, that, by the way, was Gabe Wicks. He is the head of the audio division of HarperCollins. Gabe, how many audiobooks do you produce a year?
Oh, 400 or 500.
Yeah, 400 to 500. And why are you here? Because you don't. Well, we'll talk about that later. All right, let's just do this. ADD kicking in. All right, here we go. Chapter 4. Identification, please. The uniformed officer at the desk stifled a yawn as he waited for me to dig the driver's license from my wallet. It was almost 6:30 a.m., full daylight in the eastern edge of the Central Time Zone. According to GPS coordinates, the town of Clanson was 146.7 miles from my home in Orange Beach, about 2.5 hours away and well over the state line. Frankly, I had never heard of Clanson. Okay, in line, okay. Frankly, I had never heard of Clanson, Florida, but here it was. And for a tiny village well off the beaten path, it appeared to have a very nice jail. The officer was young, early 30s, and noticeably out of any kind of shape one might otherwise choose if not for the convenient option of overeating and neglecting to exercise. Receding on top, his hair in back fell over his collar. The uniform he wore was messy and wrinkled. Not a judgment, just an observation. The policeman was tired, which was understandable at this hour of the morning, but when he took my license, glanced at the picture, looked back at me, and asked, "Is this you?" I had to bite my tongue. 1,000 sarcastic answers were competing for space in my head and beginning to enthusiastically line up behind my vocal cords. I managed to choke them all back, however, and reply with a smile. "Yep, it's me." Then, taking a stab at being friendly, I said, "Wow, you sure are here early." He stared at me for a beat, grunted, and handed the license back. Picking up a pen and sliding a clipboard to the middle of the desk, he pursed his lips and asked, "Purpose of your visit?" I took a breath before answering. Here was a guy I knew for whom middle ground did not exist. I'd already assessed the situation, determined its likely outcome, and within seconds of walking through the door, decided upon my role here. Successfully navigating this encounter would require me to way overdo it in the submission department. A guy like this, I thought, everyone he meets is a favored guest or a threat to his authority. The personality trait is not rare or even unique. Privately, I call it the Barney Fife syndrome, BFS, a reference to the deputy sheriff that actor Don Knotts portrayed long ago on The Andy Griffith Show. During his 5 seasons as the overly officious lawman in the classic television series, Knotts won 5 Emmys for his work. Deputy Fife remains the gold standard for this temperamental psyche, and before me sat a textbook case. Oh, and the fact that this particular example of that psychological manifestation also happened to be wearing a badge Let's just say that the irony was not lost on me. "Well, sir," I began, addressing him as sir, though he was at least 20 years my junior. "I received a call from someone on your staff about a person who is in your custody." Now, see how I did that? I referred to the people on duty as his staff. The prisoner was in his custody. Was I brown-nosing? Absolutely. "Ah," he said, "you have a friend in jail. Not good." I have come to understand that the classic cases of Barney Fife syndrome appear most often in middle-aged males who, for whatever reason, have never experienced the reins of sovereign command until suddenly, through some miracle of bureaucracy. You start with that sentence or that paragraph? Okay. Well, the beginning of the sentence is the paragraph. Smart aleck.
Same thing, yeah.
Same thing. Okay, here we go. I have come to understand that the classic cases of Barney Fife syndrome appear most often in middle-aged males who, for whatever reason, have never experienced the reins of sovereign command until suddenly, through some miracle of bureaucracy. Am I saying that right? Bureaucracy. All right. I have come to understand that the classic cases of Barney Fife syndrome appear most often in middle-aged males who, for whatever reason, have never experienced the reins of sovereign command until suddenly, through some miracle of bureaucracy, or absent anyone else willing to walk around at night with a flashlight, they are in charge. Authority, especially when it is undeserved, unsupervised, and unrestrained, often produces an adrenaline-fueled rush of superiority, power that can be dangerous to the common-sense wishes of mere mortals like you and me. Therefore, lest trouble ensue, we must always be careful to humble ourselves before this type of person. In other words, no matter how ridiculous the situation, we must remember to display outlandish admiration for their skills and intellect, or we will most assuredly be considered a threat. "Yes, sir," I said. "Evidently, I do have a friend in jail. He's an old man, white hair. I'm not really sure what he's supposed to have done." Despite my experience in dealing with people like this officer, I am sometimes astonished by my own stupidity. True, I recognized my mistake the instant it popped out of my mouth, but it was too late. The policeman's head tilted upward as his The policeman's head tilted upward as his eyes narrowed. Slowly, he gathered himself and stood. Placing his hands on the desk, he leaned forward and spoke menacingly. What he had. Okay. Placing his hands on the desk, he leaned forward and spoke menacingly. What he has supposed to have done? You're saying my people arrested somebody that didn't do anything, huh? He glared at me. Immediately I feigned surprise. I might have even cowered a bit. "Oh, no, sir," I said, my eyes wide. "That's not what I meant at all. Your people wouldn't have done that. I just meant that I don't know what he did. Can I see him, sir?" I almost laughed out loud when Sure enough, he responded to my little show by visibly relaxing and saying, "Yes, you can see him." Looking at the clipboard on his desk, however, he frowned. "Name of prisoner?" "Jones," I replied. "Not Mr. Jones, just "Yeah, I know," he interrupted. "I heard him say it 5 times. He jerked his head toward several cheap chairs. Let me do the interrupt thing again. "Jones," I replied. "Not Mr. Jones, just Jones." "Yeah, I know," he interrupted. "I heard him say it 5 times. He jerked his head toward several cheap chairs lined along the wall to his right and added, "Have a seat. Visitors are not allowed until 9 a.m. The officer saw me glance at my watch and grinned when my face fell. It was 6:37. Slowly, I took a deep breath to compose myself, at the same time thinking about the Incredible Hulk, still another television program I had watched as a child. "I'm sorry," I stated calmly, knowing it would serve no purpose for me to get mad, turn green, and rip the place apart like Dr. Bruce Banner would have done. "I thought I would be able to see my friend." "You can," he replied, "at 9. My eyes narrowed. "Look," I said, not quite so friendly this time. All I want is for you to sit down," the officer said loudly as he stood and came around the desk. In place, he paused as if to look me over. Then, with a forward lean, much too aggressive for my taste, he peppered me with questions. "Are you related to the prisoner?" "No," I replied. "Are you an attorney?" "No." "Do you represent an attorney or represent the office of an attorney otherwise located in the state of Florida?" "No." "Are you therefore, in fact, visiting these premises as a civilian observer?" "I am." "Then you are classified 14A, a visitor," he said, "and visitors are not allowed until 9 a.m. With those words, he stopped and lifted his chin. Appearing to be satisfied with the flow of words that had just gushed from his mouth, he sniffed loudly, placed his hand on the can of mace holstered in his belt, and turned to walk away. Over his shoulder, he tossed his coup de grace, adding, "I suggest you take a seat." So I did. I'd hurried from home, neglecting to bring anything to read. The brochures for bail bonding were interesting, and I studied them a little closer, not certain whether or not I might need one at 9 o'clock. Lacking anything else to do, I worked on my smartphone, answering newer emails and deleting a lot of the older ones. And I watched the clock, glancing often through the glass at the reception desk, keeping an eye on the officer. Interestingly, the officer's actual duties appeared to be very uninteresting. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I never saw him do anything else. He didn't fill out a form. He didn't call anybody. No one called him, so he never had to answer the phone. He didn't check on the prisoners. He couldn't have. He never left his desk, not even to go to the bathroom. He did nap a couple of times. At least I think he did. That's assuming the arms crossed, chin on the chest thing was not prayer. For his sake, I hoped not. God, I have always believed, frowns on snoring during prayer. Finally, it was 9 o'clock. The officer let me know that he knew it was 9 because at 8:59 he ceased all motion and pointedly stared at the clock. It was the same clock I'd been watching, but it was amusing to see him suddenly so attentive to it. I'd risen from my seat when he came through the door. He walked straight at me without saying anything. It was about 5 feet away when, before I could decide whether to say anything or reach out my hand to shake his, he did a sharp turn to the left without breaking stride. The move was unexpected, and quite frankly, it startled me. He hadn't done a full turn. It was more of a 45-degree angle, but with the unmistakable flair of military precision. In the waiting area of the Clanson jail, of course, it just seemed goofy. All he'd needed was a sword or a rifle on his shoulder and someone to count cadence, and he could have held his own parade at Fort Bragg. Anyway, it threw me when he turned, but he never stopped. Just continued his steady march to and through the door. He was halfway down the hall before I caught up, and as I matched his steps, I couldn't help thinking, hup, 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 hey up, hup, hup. As soon as the thought was in my head, a laugh was out of my mouth, which was a mistake. Now understand, it was just a tiny laugh. This was no guffaw. It was not an outburst of hilarity. I was not giggling. Heck, the sound I made would have hardly qualified as a chuckle, but it was loud enough to get the attention of my grim escort. Suspecting I might be laughing at him, which in a way I was, he said, "Is something funny?" I didn't answer, and thankfully we quickly arrived at a brightly lit, barred cage that was significantly larger than the others. "This is holding cell number 2, I was informed as we approached. The comment caused me to glance around, but I did not see a holding cell number 1. I did, however, see my old friend. He was standing right next to the door. "Good morning," Jones said cheerfully as we approached. Okay.
Sounding good.
Okay, good. You
I
want
think
to
we
move
do
on?
need to have you go back and redo the rest with an audience.
What now? Oh, really? So you think I'm showing off for him?
Oh, no.
No. You guys okay to go just a little more? Or do we do one more? I mean, we got to do it anyway, but...
I don't know about a whole nother chapter. Why don't you cut it?
All right. So let me do, let's see. Let's get...
How long? 7 page.
Let's go to the beginning of page 41.
Got it.
All right, beginning of page 41,
When
and
you're
I'll
ready.
tell you bye, and then we'll do this again tomorrow, wherever we have to be. Okay, here we go. You guys ready?
Ready.
Chapter 5. Good morning, I thought. He said good morning? Considering the circumstances, I wasn't sure how to respond. But I'd suddenly had the thought that this was somewhat like getting my daddy out of jail. Anyway, he'd said good morning. So with an impish smile, I replied, "It is for some of us. Is it for you?" "Of course it is," he said without the slightest hint of doubt in his voice. "Oh, brother," the officer said. He smirked and shook his head in a holier-than-thou display of disgust. "What?" I asked, momentarily taken aback. "We do not have good mornings here," he explained, as if talking to a child. "This is a jail. Here we deal with the dregs of humanity, felons, miscreants, habitual offenders." He was deadly serious, and I did my best to imitate a person who was seriously listening. This prevented me from glancing at Jones or allowing my eyes to roll into the back of my head as he droned on. Deviants, the mentally unstable, and those who are generally a menace to society and or themselves. Jones was close, within handshaking distance of me, but still on the other side of the bars. As the officer ran down his litany of miscreants, I looked at the old man, who raised his eyebrows in an innocent expression that asked, "Do you see what I've been dealing with here?" I almost laughed out loud, but managed an effort at throat clearing that hid my true feelings nicely. This guy was a cartoon. Nevertheless, he did have Jones locked up in the big house, so I politely asked, "May I have a moment of privacy with my friend?" For a beat, he appeared to consider whether or not I might have a Tommy gun in the pocket of my jeans or a helicopter hovering nearby for a jailbreak, but he squinted, nodded slowly, and indicated a desk in the walkway several cells down. "Sure," he said, with a level of suspicion and menace in his voice rarely heard outside Attica's death row or on the chain gangs of Angola. "I'll be right over here," he said, and as an afterthought added, "No funny business, boys." "What kind of funny business are you thinking about?" Jones grinned. "You want to bust me out?" Turning to the old man, I shook my head and slightly lifted my arms and hands in what is commonly known as a universal parenting gesture. This move, used most often to deliver a message of mystification to a teenager, says, "Will you be quiet? What in the world are you thinking?" without verbal communication actually taking place. I suppose that for the first time I was also feeling somewhat the authority figure in our relationship, so I took a stern posture. "Exactly what is going on here?" I asked. The old man shrugged it off. "Oh, they nabbed me on a 752. I sighed. "What's a 752? "Loitering in a city park after midnight. Of course, they had me dead to rights on a 751, which is loitering in a city park before midnight. They were cagey, though, watched me for a couple of hours, then popped me for the more serious offense." "You're kidding," I said, suddenly outraged. "You're in jail for loitering in a city park? Isn't that why city parks are built? I mean," I was beginning to sputter, "doesn't one go to a park specifically to loiter?" Jones laughed and patted my arm through the bars. "No worries," he said. "It was important. And anyway, I'll be out soon." There we go. You guys, thank you for joining us. We're going to keep rolling, and we're going to go this afternoon and into early evening. Then we'll start again in the morning, and we will find you at 12:15 p.m. tomorrow, wherever we are in this, and we'll do it again Thursday. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed doing this. I've enjoyed you guys being with me. So I appreciate you stopping what you're doing, taking the time to be here. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? All right. Have a good rest of your day.